Hi there everyone. So tonight's recipe is cauliflower cheese. As per my usual style, it's a simple recipe, it's a quick recipe, it's a cheap recipe. My rationale for this is, as I've told you in other videos and I've told you in my introductory one, I came from a point of no knowledge. I came from a point of not being able to eat just about anything, particularly vegetable wise. So I'm trying to make it clear for people who were like me or are like me with the lack of experience or lack of knowledge, to show each stage. So that's again what we're doing in this video. It might be repetitive for people who know what they're doing, but I'm trying to look at it from the point of view of, if you come at one of my videos, this might be the first one you see, so I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to show you the preparation stages for every video as we go. So let's crack on, let's do this, and let's make some cauliflower cheese. First thing we need to do is measure out 750 grams of frozen cauliflower, or if you're using a fresh cauliflower, chop it up until you have 750 grams. That's generally half a large cauliflower. If we are using frozen, try and do this early so they can defrost naturally. If not, you're going to have to stick them in your microwave just to defrost them a bit faster for yourself. Then measure out 40 grams of vegan butter. I've mentioned in other videos that this is my vegan butter of choice because it performs exactly the same as dairy. You need to make no changes to how you use it in a recipe, just substitute it exactly as you would for dairy. And after measuring it out, add to what will probably be your second largest saucepan if you've got a set of 4 saucepans, and set aside until we require it. And next up, measure out 500 millilitres of nut milk. Make sure it's the nut milks that you need to keep refrigerated, as they do perform far superior to the ones that can stay on an open shelf. So always use the ones that you need to keep refrigerated. I've said before, my personal preference is hazelnut, but it's difficult to get that one now, so my next favourite is the cashew here. And take and add this to a small saucepan. In a set of 4, it will be your smallest saucepan. Well, in any set, it's going to be your smallest saucepan. Next up, we're going to measure out 40 grams of plain flour, which we're going to set aside until it's required. Now, this step here, you can absolutely skip it if you want to and just go straight into using jarred ground nutmeg that you can buy in the shops. However, it is 100% worth the effort to grind your own nutmeg. It just adds such an oomph to the nutmeg flavour. Granted, this is far more than I need for this instance because I generally grind 2 cloves at a time and then store and use as required, but it is absolutely 100% worth grinding it yourself. This is a wee old magic billet that the mother-in-law gave me, and it is absolutely perfect for doing the job. And once the nutmeg is ground, just go round the inside of the billet's cupola with a spatula just to release any of the nutmeg, the ground nutmeg, that is stuck to either the bladed area or the cupola itself. And now we need to measure out 1 pinch of ground nutmeg. I use a specific set of spoons that has a pinch measure on it, amongst others such as Tad and Smidgen. You can pick them up in various places. These ones I bought in Pro Cook Shop, but Amazon, everyone has similar spoons of a similar nature. I like them because it means I can guarantee that I'm using the same measurement every time. And to the same ramekin that has our ground nutmeg, we're adding 1 teaspoon of table salt. And we can follow that up with half a teaspoon of ground black pepper into the same ramekin. And lastly, for this ramekin, we're going to add 2 medium-sized towards large-sized bay leaves. They do come much larger and they do come much smaller, so 2 bay leaves of around the size that you see there. And now we require 200 grams of extra mature cheddar cheese. If you're not using extra mature, you can add a little bit more cheese just to add that strength of flavour. So maybe 225 to 250 grams if it's just a mature cheddar you're using. Extra mature, the 200 grams is exactly what we need, or thereabouts. And then we can grate our cheddar. The rough side is absolutely fine for this one. We don't need to go in and go into one of the intricate fine ones. The big rough side is exactly what you require. Then just take and store your cheddar in a bowl until later, until we need it. And the next thing we're going to require is 4 tablespoons of Parmesan-style cheese, which has been very finely grated, as I'm trying to show you in the video. So whatever your finest grating setting is, that's how it should have been grated. 4 tablespoons, which equates to around 24 grams, or that sort of ballpark. And the last ingredient that we require is our cherry tomatoes, which we need 12 of. And if you just take and quarter each of them, once we've quartered all our tomatoes, we can take and we can store them aside for later. Excuse me, I've to stitch a hole in my non-cut gloves and I couldn't get a good grip there, so everything was sliding around. But as I say, quarter them and set aside until later. Now quickly drain any water from the defrosting of the cauliflower. You don't need to get the cauliflower completely defrosted, but you need it soft enough to cut with a knife. And from here, we're looking to cut up the florets into nice mouth-sized chunks. So you can see the sort of size that I'm aiming for visually via the video, but we don't want anything too large. Nice, small, bite-sized chunks, just so that when we get it mixed in with the cheese is all round, it's all mixed well together. And once we have them all broken down, we're just going to set them aside in a bowl until we're ready to use them. And now that we are ready to cook, we can start turning on our various pots on the hob. So under the butter pot, we're going to set it to medium and we're going to melt the butter. Immediately after starting the butter, we're going to put our milk on medium-high, and whilst the butter's melting, don't forget to stir the butter, but we're also going to have to stir the milk sporadically as well. And then we're going to start our water. We don't need to bring the water to a boil immediately, but if we start putting some heat in it, we can start getting it up to a higher temperature so that when we require it to be at the boil, we can pump up the temperature and get it to the boil really quickly. So stick it on a bit of medium so it just gently starts to heat the water just now. And as soon as the butter has melted, we're going to add our flour. And we're going to cook off what's called a roux, which is equal parts fat, in this case butter, to equal parts flour. The type of roux we're creating is a pale roux because it's going to finish a golden colour, and this is going to take us around 3 minutes. Now, whilst we're stirring our roux, pay attention to your milk. We're looking at it to get warm, but we don't want it to be boiling warm. We're looking for a little bit of steam coming off it, so you may need to adjust your temperature on your hob accordingly if you start to see the milk getting too hot, or if it's still a little bit cool when we're getting near the end of the cooking of the roux, because we're looking for some warm milk to add to the roux at the right time. So just pay close attention to it. You'll know your own hob and you'll know how to adjust it, but maybe up, maybe down, depending on the temperature it's at. You can test it like baby milk as long as your hands are clean by sticking your wee pinky in and just get a wee feel of the temperature to see if it's beginning to get hot enough. But be careful it's not too hot, you don't want to scald that, so pay close attention. Either that or use a thermometer if you have one. So ideal temperature is below 50 degrees Celsius and above 40 degrees Celsius. If you have the thermometer, use a thermometer to check the temperature. Visually look for that little bit of steam beginning to rise and you know you're in the sort of zone, so just pay attention to how it's heating up. And once your 3 minutes are up, your roux should begin to look quite golden, and we're going to take and we're going to add small amounts of milk. We're not adding a huge amount, could be 5 or 6 different pours we're doing here, and we're going to take and then we're going to stir the milk in. Once we have a paste, once there's no lumps you can see within the roux, we're going to add a little bit more milk, and we're going to repeat this process over and over and over. As the roux begins to get more of a liquidy sort of paste, it becomes easier to add slightly higher quantities of milk. But if you add too much milk too soon, it's going to be harder to break out the lumps. So small amounts building up to larger amounts as we work our way through. Don't be tempted to dump in a huge amount because then your work's cut out for breaking out the lumps. It pastes much easier with little quantities to begin with and build up as we go. And once we have a nice sauce base, just as we see here, that's nice and liquidy, we're going to add it back to our hob, set it to a medium-low heat, and we're going to add our bay leaves, we're going to add our nutmeg and our salt and pepper. Now, both our pepper and our nutmeg are very, very likely to clump. That is nothing you need to worry about. We're going to be stirring it in, but then with the back of your spatula or the back of your spoon, push any of the big clumps you see to the side walls of the pot and just press them against, and that will help break them up. We've got 12 minutes to break them all down, so it's not a big rush. Stir, find some lumps, press it against the wall, stir, find some lumps, press it against the walls. Now, at this point, we need to be getting the water up to temperature as well, so make sure you've turned your water up to get that up close to the boil now. And your sauce base, because I'm not sure if I mentioned it or not, we're going to cook this for 12 minutes, just letting it thicken up and reduce down slightly. And as soon as our water reaches the boil, we're going to add our cauliflower. It will knock a lot of the temperature out of the water, particularly if you've been using frozen cauliflower. Wait for that water to get back to the boil, and then we're going to cook it for 6 minutes at the boil. And whilst the cauliflower is cooking, do not forget to stir your sauce. You don't want your sauce to stick and burn to the bottom of your pan, so it will require to be stirred reasonably often. Not continually, but you will need to be attending to it quite often. And a minute or so before our sauce base is ready to come off the hob, our cauliflower should now be ready. So take it and drain it into a colander, and then just leave it set aside for a minute or so. And quickly back to your sauce and give it another stir, because again, we don't want it sticking to the bottom, we don't want it burning, so come back, give it a quick stir, and it should be just about ready to come off the hob. If it is, do so. If not, stir it until it is, but it should be just about at the end of your 12 minutes now. We now need to fish out our bay leaves. If you need to, use tongs so that you don't burn your fingers, but it might be possible for you to drag the bay leaf up to the side wall. Just use your spatula to scrape off any of your sauce, because waste not, want not. And then once you've got them both out, we're going to add the cheddar. Then we're going to add the tomatoes and give it a good stir together. Put it back on the hob at a low heat, and we wait for the cheddar to be mostly melted. It doesn't need to be entirely melted. We're looking for it to have mostly broke down through the sauce, but not entirely. And then we're ready to serve it. Now, if you like large portions, this will serve 3. If you're looking for smaller portions, then it will serve 6. So divide up accordingly as to how you're going to serve it. First of all, we're going to serve the cauliflower, and then we're going to add the cheese sauce on top. And once we've served the cheese sauce, we're then going to take the Parmesan-style cheese that we grated earlier, and we're going to scatter that loosely across the top of our cheese sauce. Then grab yourself a cook's blowtorch, and we're going to roughly char the cheese. We're not looking to completely burn it, but we are looking to give it a just charred nature across the top of the Parmesan-style cheese. There we go. I said it was easy. It doesn't look a lot on the plate, but it's really, really filling. It's one of those ones that surprises you how filling it is. It's probably the cheese sauce that bags you up. So, a wee bit of tomato, a wee bit of cauliflower, a wee bit of cheese. Years ago, I wouldn't even have taken a bite of this with the way my mental attitude was. Now, it's stunning. I love it. The cheese, the tomato, even the cauliflower, just all add so much together. It's one of the most simple ones I make, so if you're going to try any recipe, try this one for simpleness. Take care. All the best. Stay safe, folks.